What makes young people crave the rave?
I'm curious what makes you so curious.
In the beginning was the beat.
Welcome to the Rave Curious podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Glazer. What are we curious about? We're curious about electronic music and the culture that surrounds it. And how do we satisfy that curiosity? We do it by talking to some of the people who have dedicated their lives to the electronic music scene, the DJs, producers, promoters, and more. My guest on today's podcast is Moe Espinosa, better known as Drumcell, a techno producer and DJ from Los Angeles, who really helped to put the city on the map as far as techno is concerned. Moe is one of the co-founders of Droid Behavior, the promotion company and record label that started off in the really early 2000s at a time when there was really no techno happening, especially in Los Angeles, and against all odds built up a scene in a city that even at the height of the big rave days never really had room for techno. And of course that has changed dramatically in the past few years. LA has developed probably one of the biggest techno scenes in the US in terms of the number of events happening every weekend, the number of international artists who are coming through on a regular basis. And it's almost impossible to imagine how that could have happened without Droid Behavior. They started throwing parties 15 years ago, and they were bringing out techno legends like Surgeon in like the mid 2000s at a time when really these guys were not playing anywhere in the States. And the Droid guys, they made it happen, and they're still making it happen even today. They're not around LA as often as is so often the case. As Droid blew up as promoters in LA, they also blew up as musicians overseas. Moe tours extensively around the world. I used to see him all the time in Berlin, especially when I was doing some work for Chris Liebing's CLR label, who put out quite a bit of Moe's music over the past few years. Of course, CLR has gone on hiatus recently, which has actually given Moe a chance to put out music on some other labels. Put out an EP on Rodhead's Dystopian label recently, which kind of opened him up to a whole new part of the techno audience that might not have known him previously. So he's constantly making the flight from Los Angeles all the way to Europe, several times a month, it turns out. And we talk about that, the worst commute on earth. But he keeps doing it. He doesn't move to Europe. He keeps doing it because he still cares about LA, and he's still making things happen here at home. In the weeks that have passed since I sat down with Moe, Droid actually announced their next Interface party. It's Interface 55. It's celebrating Droid's 14-year anniversary, and the first tier discount tickets sold out within just a few hours of the party being announced. They hadn't even. There was no lineup, there was no venue, there was simply Droid Behavior, Interface 55, and a date, and people went out and bought tickets just on the strength of that. That's the sort of loyalty that the LA audience has when it comes to Droid Behavior, and I think my conversation with Moe really helps explain how they built up that kind of commitment. And speaking of commitment, I know it's been a little while since I last put out a podcast. What can I say? We've been doing this podcast every other week for a year, and then things just got busy on my end. I got sucked into a non-techno work project, a little classic rock on the resume now, which was great to do. I'm also getting married in 3 weeks, so that takes a little bit of time, it turns out. So yeah, if you've been wondering where the podcast has been the past few weeks, all I can say is, I guess, thank you for wondering. And I apologize for the delay. There will hopefully not be any further delays. I've recently recorded conversations with Neil Landstrom. I did one with Arthur Baker, and I did one with Heidi, all of which I plan on putting out before the end of the year, plus maybe one other that I'm not quite ready to talk about. We'll see how it goes. But right now, let's listen to my conversation with Moe Espinosa, a.k.a. Drumcell. Thanks for listening. I don't know. I do an intro, but like, we're here with Moe Espinosa, aka Drumcell, aka Hypoxia.
Yeah.
Hypoxia, right?
Hypoxia,
As
that's
I was
right.
saying, I was like, fuck, am I going to get it wrong? I don't think I've ever said it out loud before.
Yeah, I don't think most people have yet.
But you drove in from, is it Hacienda Heights?
That's right. That's right.
Which is one of those places. I don't think, nobody, I think half the people who live in LA don't know where Hacienda Heights is.
That's true.
And people who are from LA have no concept of places like Hacienda Heights.
Well, interestingly enough, like that entire area that I grew up in, Hacienda Heights and Whittier, is incredibly rich with history in LA. Like it was one of like the only settlements outside of Los Angeles in the, 1800s or something like that. It was like one of the small little towns outside. And it's funny, there's like YouTube channels that are dedicated to like history of that particular area and the Whittier area and Uptown Whittier and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's in the vast scope of Los Angeles, it's rich with history, but I don't think a lot of people who live in LA now know anything about it. So.
Yeah, well, I think most people don't have a concept of like you leave, you start with the beach and then you go through, you got kind of all of Hollywood and everything.
Yeah.
And then people know like downtown now and they've heard of South Central.
Yeah.
And then it keeps going for another 90 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something like I've been to Hacienda Heights once because I had a roommate who was half Chinese, and he had some like Chinese friends and family out there, and we went out for Chinese food on Christmas, and I just remember like there's whole areas where it's like there's no like all the signs are in Chinese, like there's an entire shop. Like we went to a shopping mall, there was nothing in English.
Yeah, hardly many people in that area speak English, period. But it's funny because it was predominantly a Latino community for years. But sometime...
So you're saying Espinosa is not a Chinese name?
No, unfortunately not. But I think I could be totally wrong, but I think like in the early 90s, they built like the largest Buddhist temple in North America in Hacienda Heights. So it's like nestled right in the hills, and it's beautiful. I mean, we go there for like Chinese New Year's, and they have like great food and performances and all that stuff. But when that Buddhist temple had went up, the entire area surrounding the temple became like Holy Land. Mm-hmm. So a massive influx of Buddhist people had come in, predominantly Chinese, into the area, and I mean, the entire neighborhood completely changed. I mean, it just flipped all the way around. And now it's kind of like a hotbed of like culinary, Asian food spots. And like there's a lot of like Asian people from even like downtown LA area will drive out there on the weekends because of how many restaurants are out in Hacienda Heights area.
Yeah, I mean, that's the spot, right? Yeah. Like, and I remember, I don't know if you know Mark Schneider.
Yeah.
From Word and Sound.
Word and
he
Sound.
was in LA. Yeah. And a couple months ago, and we were supposed to meet up for lunch like the day after his gig, and he was in town with his girlfriend, and it was kind of like, where are we going? What are we doing? Where are we going? Where are we doing? Where are we going? What are we doing? And then finally they're like, okay, so we're going for dim sum in Hacienda Heights. We'll be there in a half hour. It's like 2:30 in the afternoon. Yeah. I'm like, it's going to take me 90 minutes to get there, and dim sum ends at 4.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I guess I won't be joining you guys after all. Like they're he's from Hamburg and she's from Portland. They have no sense of the distance.
The distance area.
Just like, come meet us for meet us for dim sum. And I'm like, that would have worked if we had planned it 4 hours in advance.
Yeah, I mean, I just had some friends from New York visiting this past weekend. It was their first time to LA, and I mean, every time we would tell them to meet us somewhere for dinner, they'd always show up like 30 minutes late. They just could not wrap their head around like how vast the city is and the distances that it takes to travel to go anywhere.
Right. So all right. So you're from here.
I am born and raised.
Here, and you're going to Europe tomorrow.
Pretty often. Yeah, tomorrow I'm leaving I'm playing this weekend a couple gigs in Poland, like in Krakow and Sopot, I think. So it's funny. This is not a usual occurrence, but I have like a 12-hour layover in Amsterdam, so I'm leaving like pretty early in the week and gonna sleep in one of those little yotels inside the airport for.
Do they have those at
They do.
Schiphol?
They do. I mean, they're little pods that you kind of just like walk into and sleep.
I feel like I would just lose. I would just get too claustrophobic. I mean, this room that we're recording in is a
it's pretty tiny.
little tiny for my taste. I can't imagine like being in a pod.
Yeah, as long as it's air conditioned, I could sleep through anything.
So, but how often are you going? Because talking about distances and how long it takes to get places, you're humping 12 hours
Easy.
12
to 15 hour flights actually, and I'm doing it like 2 or 3 times a month now.
Wow.
And I mean, you get a lot of it. Like a lot of friends in Europe are like, dude, why don't you just move to Berlin? But well, first of all, I was born here. I love the city. LA is my home, and I I soak into everything that LA is. But at the same time, my family's here, and everybody I care about is here, and this is always just going to be home for me. And I think that it really helps me appreciate going to Europe often. Like I enjoy actually being there. It's part of the excitement of it all. The flights are horrible. Definitely. Sitting on an airplane. My commute is longer than I would say the majority of people in the world.
Yeah. It's longer than most people's work week.
Exactly. But I don't know. I mean, I'm racking up tons of Sky Miles, so that helps with
catching the upgrade more often than not.
Exactly. Upgrades and benefits and all that stuff like that definitely makes it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk some history.
Sure.
A little.
Mm-hmm.
So because I don't even know that much of it. I mean, I remember I moved to LA in 2003, end of 2003.
Yeah.
And that's, you were one of the first people I met.
Yeah.
Because I hit the ground from Detroit, and I'd never even been to LA. I didn't really know anybody in LA. I was just like, okay, where's the techno?
Yeah.
And you as part of Droid Behavior, you were kind of like the only guys doing it.
For sure.
And I think you guys were fairly new, I think, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really knew who the hell we were at the time either. We were just kind of like kids that were trying to muster up and create some sort of a techno scene in LA.
So where did that come from? So tell me, give me your history, and then
sure,
kind of how you first found it. And
yeah, I mean, I started going to quote unquote raves and such in the mid 90s, so 95, 96. And it was funny because I grew up with a lot of older people around me. I was always big and, looked older than my age. So I had a lot of older friends. And I think to them, I already had missed the best part of the electronic music movement in the mid 90s. They were like, oh, you missed it already, dude. You're too young. But it was booming for me. I mean, the rave scene in the mid-90s here in LA was massive. There was so much going on. But the one thing that the city was always void of was techno. It never really was. Well, there was never no purist sound for techno, so to speak.
Sure.
And then maybe that's kind of global around the world. But, we had these parties where you had the house room and the trance room and the drum and bass room. And then you'd sprinkle in a techno DJ here and there. But it was always kind of not really something that anyone really paid attention to. So, I mean, fast forward through the late 90s into the early 2000s, I think the electronic music culture here just on a political level just collapsed because of all the anti-rave laws that were going on. People were shutting down events, and there was all these kinds of really kind of conservative views towards what kind of music events were allowed to happen and were not allowed to happen. And that's when the kind of underground scene moved into nightclubs, and the festivals had to move outside of LA to places like Las Vegas and stuff like that because of more relaxed laws. So the scene was a little bit void, and I think me and my buddies just, Vidal and Vangelis from Raíz, we were just, I don't know, innocently just like, hey, let's try to get together and throw some parties and try to muster up some, interest in techno in the community. And it was funny because we just basically were meeting people randomly that were kind of transplants to LA that were from Chicago, from Detroit, from the Midwest in general, that were like, where's the techno at? That's what everybody was asking.
So I wasn't special.
Yeah, no, there was tons of people. I can name handfuls of them that were kind of a part of where we kind of began. And most of them came from the Midwest. So, I mean, essentially, we were just trying to gather up as many like-minded individuals who had the same taste in music as we did, and try to throw parties where we could all come together. And they did start off rather small, like in house parties, and Vidal's parents' house when they were gone, or a buddy's house or something, moved over into a bar. I remember we used to throw these little parties off La Cienega called Wonder Bar, and I think I remember seeing you.
That might have been right.
Yeah, and then it moved from a bar to smaller warehouses, and it just progressively got bigger. And I have to say, we got rather lucky because we never really had like a failed party. Everything seemed to always just get slightly bigger every single time. There was a bigger crowd, and I think we were incredibly lucky in that. But I have no room to complain about it for sure.
Well,
but
you had Vidal, who is the greatest human promoter. Like that dude is still. I went and saw Neil Landstrom on Saturday at 200-person party.
Yeah, I think I actually went, but it was much later. But yeah, that was an interesting little venue there.
Yeah, and it's like, and there he was. And I'm like that dude's been at like every techno event.
Yeah.
That I could think of for as long as I've known him.
Yeah.
But where did you what was it about techno? Like if you started going to these raves and the predominant thing is house, trance, drum and bass, West Coast breaks. What do you remember the moment where techno kind of caught you?
I do. I think if we were all sitting in the room, each of us have a different story of how we were kind of introduced to it a little bit.
No,
but
that's what this is for.
Yeah, but for me in particular, like the dudes in LA that were playing techno in the 90s when I was going to parties were people like DJ Hyperactive, who was originally from Chicago but had transported over to LA and was working with this record store called Higher Source. This guy, Dean DaCosta, that worked at that record store, used to like buy techno records, and I remember I used to go there and just kind of skim through the bins, and whatever was on Hyperactive's, list of records that he suggested. Frankie Bones and Adam X were both coming to LA a lot and playing shows. In particular, Frankie Bones threw this party called Computer Controlled at this venue in San Gabriel Valley. It was a little bit outside the city. He made a CD out of that party that he did. It was like a 1-hour mix CD that he did, and that kind of changed my life. But I think originally, just some friends that I grew up with that were a bit older than me passed over a Plastic Man CD to me, and it was I think it was either Sheet One or Music. Can't remember which one it was, but I absolutely fell in love with those records. But they were more, if you remember, electronic music based. There was a lot of break beats.
Sure.
And stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, stripped down.
Yeah, it wasn't so much like straight dance floor techno stuff.
No,
half
half of those records, like you couldn't possibly dance to them.
Exactly, and I fell in love with those records. I mean, I played them over and over and over again. Oh, I think I had them on cassette tape, and I just like continuously like listened to them on cassette until it was finally the first time I heard of Richie Hawtin coming to LA. These guys, B3 Candy promoters in LA, booked him at the Glass House in Pomona. And they booked him as Plastic Man, but I don't even think he was performing as Plastic Man by that time. But they just put it on the flyer. And he showed up, and he just did a DJ set as Richie Hawtin.
Was there a giant butterfly behind him?
There was.
There's a photo I did. I edited Michael Tolberg's book that came out last year of all the Southern California rave photos.
Yeah.
And there's a great photo. Yeah, it's like
cool.
bald, bespectacled Rich.
Yeah,
and with this ridiculous
butterfly
behind, giant rave butterfly behind him.
I think that was like the logo for B3 parties or something like that. But anyways, I went there expecting to hear what I heard on these Plastic Man albums, but showed up and it was like Richie Hawtin playing this brutal form of techno that he used to play, and it just blew me away. Like it felt like it completely changed my entire perspective towards electronic music. And it was always like, what is this? And where can I find more of this? And then that just like, oh yeah, he's from Detroit, maybe Windsor technically, but
but part of the Detroit.
So it was like,
community.
What else is from Detroit? And backwards for me, it was like, oh, Kevin Saunderson, Derek May, Jeff Mills, and like, just discovering all this stuff and just being a vacuum to it, just more and more and more and more and more. And I never looked back. I never went another way. Just techno was what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because even in Detroit, where living amongst that, it's still a very similar experience of that. Like, you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And like for me, I don't know what year that party was, but I think it would have been like 96, 97.
97, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
97.
August 96, Sickness and Recovery, Jeff Mills and Richie Hawtin in a tent in a field in Windsor.
Damn.
And same difference. Like I knew the name Richie Hawtin, wasn't familiar with his stuff really.
Yeah.
Had never even heard of Jeff Mills, oddly enough, because I managed to miss that whole like wizard 80s Detroit thing. Even though I lived in the broadcast area, I just didn't know about it. And then boom, like you go hear Jeff Mills, like, the height of his, that would have been within a month or two of him recording the Liquid Room CD. So similar to your Frankie Bones computer control CD.
Thing.
Like I had, I went and saw Jeff Mills and I heard all these records for the first time and I was like, what the fuck is that? And then like you meet someone that has a couple of Axis records and then I go to a house party with Derek Plazlako playing in somebody's basement in East Lansing a few weeks later. And he's playing these Axis records. And then, I finally tracked down a copy of the Liquid Room CD because it was on import only. Or I got a cassette copy. Yeah. And like 6 months later, it's like, these are these records.
It's funny. I mean, like everything you're telling me is stuff that like us kids on the West Coast who love techno, like just dreamed about these events. Like, oh, you heard about that stuff through whatever publications or magazines were talking about what was going on in Detroit. And it just seemed light years away. The distance seems so much more larger, actually, I guess for anyone at that age, but Detroit seems so far away. And the funny thing is that we went to Detroit for the first Detroit Electronic Music Festival.
Okay, for the first one.
Yeah.
So you were the Pilgrims.
Yeah. We went out there not really knowing what to expect or what.
But you just came as fans. You didn't you probably didn't even know a lot of people in Detroit.
Didn't know anybody. We were just
surprised you heard about it.
Yeah,
they announced that
kids,
5 weeks before it.
And we made the pilgrimage out to Detroit. And you know what the funny thing is on that note is I never missed one ever since.
Wow.
I've been going to Movement every year since that.
15 years now?
Yeah,
16. Yeah, this year was number 16.
And it's interesting, but going out there for the first time kind of like solidified that I was like, dude, we got to bring this to LA. Like this world that I'm living in, the energy that I'm feeding off the crowd, the enthusiasm people have for techno, just seeing people when Dave Clark was playing and people like chanting Detroit like that, it totally blew us away. I mean, mind you, I was 20 years old or 21 years old when this happened, so it was like came back to LA with so much fuel and energy to be like, we're going in, we're going to make this happen. We're going to do everything we can to try to help create a techno scene in this city.
Yeah. And it's funny because I do remember getting here and I remember, very early going to one of your parties and being the high grade Detroit snob that I am. Cause at that point, our particular crew and taste in music, we had already kind of shifted into the minimal, the Perlon, and like we would go when Rich was playing, and we would kind of like tolerate the 4 hours of banging 909 rat-tat-tat, waiting for like that last 2 hours we would just like play the weird stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I came and you guys were still definitely in that like, full on 138 BPM.
140 even maybe.
I was being generous. And I definitely remember being like, oh, this feels very 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, LA's always been a little bit late.
It takes
on things.
up to a point, but my point is not to strictly mock, but at this point, you guys are, I don't know if LA is necessarily on the forefront of techno, but what Droid is doing, what you're doing, and what Raíz is doing, and what some other people in LA are doing is as progressive now as anything anyone's doing, if not more progressive.
Yeah, definitely.
In a lot of ways. Do you Do you have a sense of like when that happened, or
I don't know, man. It feels weird. It feels like the last 16 years has kind of just blown by so quickly, and like I have a hard time trying to like put things in chronological order to figure out how the hell we got to where we are now.
No, that's my job. So
yeah, but yeah. I mean, at some point, I think we, as producers and DJs, kind of our taste matured, and I think we were starting to just try to focus on creating a sound that could be identified as our own with LA. You know, instead of just trying to listen to all these records that were coming out from Europe and trying to keep up with that, it was like, you know, we're just going to do what we do. It's not that anything that we do is completely different than anywhere else in the world. I mean, a lot of the music that we do with the Droid guys in our circle of friends is highly inspired by like the jacking sound of Chicago and like Detroit, and like there's so many different places of inspiration that we pull together to be there. But we definitely follow this path of, for as long as we've been throwing parties, there is a specific sound that we play sometimes that we know our LA patrons or followers go crazy for when we play that stuff. So our sound kind of developed off building on what works in our environment, you know, a product of our environment in LA. And
which is what? Can you describe that a little? Like,
it's a little bit more stripped down. I don't know. It's difficult to really put into words for me, but it's a bit more stripped down. It's definitely got a lot of influences of more, like I said earlier, like Chicago style, like house, techno, jacking era kind of stuff. Small vocal snippets, which I guess is pretty common in techno in general, but there's definitely a swing to things and just kind of like an energetic vibe to it. You know, there's a constant energy to it. There's not a lot of
breakdowns, not a lot of
stuff, like just really stripped down, minimal 909 kind of stuff. But anyways, I noticed that when we started putting these records out on Droid, we hit a particular point where the tracks were just being played by all of our heroes and people in Europe constantly. It was in consistent rotation. You know, David broke off and started his Truncate thing, and that just exploded in its own. And I think that the massive amount of warehouse parties that were going on in LA and the feedback that DJs that we were bringing to town that were playing the show started to spread across a lot of DJs and friends inside of Europe. And there was a general kind of hype around what's going on in LA, because for a lot of people, they've never really heard about what was going on the West Coast. The West Coast is not really a part of the country that techno followers in Europe ever really speak of.
Sure.
You know, you talk about Detroit, you talk about Chicago, you talk about New York, stuff like that, but LA?
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, I was talking to someone about this recently, like LA in the 90s had the biggest scene.
Yeah.
But you'd be hard pressed to name a DJ from that scene who's really, you know,
broken out.
Yeah, exactly. Who is, you know, playing the big festivals
on
in
the
Europe
circuit and stuff like that. Yeah, because there's a lot of like LA legends, and I'm not putting anyone down or anything, but a lot of them have never really broken out of playing in LA.
Yeah. Or just what they played didn't become, you know, a big sound overseas.
Exactly. So it's never really a city that a lot of people talked about. And I think when there was like a bit of a buzz, like, oh dude, like these guys in LA throw these like crazy underground warehouse parties and they have these visual installations, and obviously we're not the only ones doing parties now, but it's spread out and there's like a community of like warehouse parties going all over the place. It's a bit crazy in LA right now.
Honestly, I think there's too many. I think it's
incredibly oversaturated.
Which is why Neil Landstrom plays for 75 people. Yeah. And, you know, because I was telling him this when we did a podcast the next day. He's like, yeah, it's, you know, cool that every once in a while there's a party like that. And I'm like, no, bro. There was 3 parties like that
just
last
that
night alone.
Yeah.
And he's just like, are you real? I'm like, yeah, like there's, You know, there
There's
was
so
3
much
techno
going on.
parties, plus 2 credible house parties,
Yeah.
plus 3 club events that had DJs that, you know, under normal circumstances you would go see if it wasn't at a fucking, you know, downtown LA. It wasn't in an LA nightclub.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, even for us, we tried for years to, like, LA hadn't reached that kind of like level in Detroit where there was like a lot of like political kind of people calling cops on each other and throwing parts.
they like Detroit mastered that.
But I mean, you know, that didn't really hit. There was a kind of a community like understanding about things. Like nobody's throwing parties on the same night as another party, because all of us were trying to make something thrive in this city, because there wasn't enough going around that like throwing 2 parties on one night would be a disaster for both people. So we try to organize our calendars, and that's not even the case anymore. Like nowadays, we still try to like look at what other people are doing, trying not to do events on the same nights as other people, but like every weekend is called for.
Yeah.
And if we don't just throw parties when we want to throw them, that there's never any more time to throw an event.
Yeah.
Every weekend is jam packed now with like 2 or 3 different events going on in the same weekend, and it's become difficult. And I hope for the most part there's enough people in the city to fulfill everyone's events, even if they're going on the same night. But sometimes there are tragedies that happen, you know. So
Yeah. I mean, but how often are you guys doing events now?
they've been a lot slimmer than usual. You know, our flagship events that we kind of always were popular for were the interface parties.
Right. Which is up to 50 something now.
Yeah. And, you know, 50 parties to a lot of promoters might not be that big of a deal, but for us, it's like every single one of those events is complete total blood, sweat, and tears, because they're like crazy productions that we put on in warehouse parties. I mean, warehouses where we have to bring in sound and bring in tons of people. It's a big production. It's a lot of work to do. I think we're getting a little bit old to do them as often as we used to.
And you're also getting a little more absent.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You guys are all traveling.
Exactly. And that was the point I was going to bring up, is that I think most of us are trying to like really focus on our own careers. We're traveling, we're on the road, we're playing gigs, and there's not enough time as much as we used to, or energy when we were younger, to do events as often. We do these shows at Lot 613. We do our prime nights in combination with Prototype. And that's kind of like a warehouse that's been turned into a legal club. And we're able to do kind of bigger budget events, bringing in people like Ben Klock and Marcel Detman. And we've hosted quite a bit of Oscar Ton DJs in the last year at those particular events. But those happen, and they're fairly easy to run. You know what I mean?
Because it's just
everything's in place.
I mean, that place, I wish there was a little more love in that venue. And it's you know, like the one light bulb above the bar spills ambient light too far onto the back of the dance floor. It's
For
it's
sure.
like the little things that I feel like that spot. And I know that supposedly there's investment coming in, and they're gonna, you know, revamp it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for the space for sure. And I give it up to them, because they are reaching out and doing a lot of bookings that other clubs in LA never would have done.
Yeah.
I mean, when you got Avalon and you've got all these super clubs who are kind of more focusing on the EDM era of things, you know, it's nice to have a place like that where they're filling the shoes of not bringing or bringing artists that nobody usually
they're
bring.
bridging that area where it's like it's artists that you need to make sure, you know, you're spending too much money to risk an unlicensed event.
Exactly.
But you
still want that vibe.
You still want that
space.
vibe.
But the cool thing is that when we do like the prime nights with Droid and we come into Lot 613, we usually bring in more production stuff with us. Like we have our kind of our house visualist guys, and he goes by Octaform. He does a lot of the graphics and stuff for interface events. We bring him out for some of the events, and he kind of tries to transform the space into a completely different thing. And we just try to bring a little bit of our own vibe of what we do into that space. But hands down, without a doubt, I mean, there's nothing like our Droid interface parties. There's something about that is incredibly special, not only to us, but to our followers who've been coming to our shows for a long time. I mean, we've done some pretty insane things with like 360-degree visual installations and like done blackout parties where it's pitch black. And I mean, you know, there's a little bit more of a conceptual, you know, approach to those events. And we've kind of narrowed it down now to only doing those once a year in LA, whereas before we used to do them 4 or 5 times a year.
Right. That's what I remember them being fairly frequent.
Fairly often. And now we're doing them one time a year, and we're just hoping that one time a year can be kind of like a special thing that everyone kind of comes to. And
is there when do you do it? Do you have a set kind
Usually we do it around November. We've had a big meeting about it yesterday, and it looks like we're not going to be able to pull it off this year because of a lot of festivals coming to LA around that time. I like Time Warp's coming to LA.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm maybe it's not that far away. So I guess by the time this comes out, people should be promoting it by then.
Yeah, if it's it's 2 months from now.
Yeah, it's coming right around the corner. But we will plan interface for either the end of 2016 or very early in the beginning of 2017. So yeah, should be good.
So, and how I mean, when you're planning an event like that, and are you looking for venues? Are you like still in that out there finding a spot that's never been used before?
Yeah, definitely. The funny thing is
safe, legal, virgin venue, as it used to say on the rave flyers. And it was rarely, it never was all three.
Yeah,
but you might get 2 of the 3.
You gotta put it on there though.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's a plethora of venues in LA that are just around.
It's kind of endless because there's so much,
just
much random, like kind of studio space.
Yeah, studio spaces, warehouses, and just storage facilities and stuff like. There's just so much out here. It's but it's funny over the years, and I mean, this isn't really new, but there are these like venue scouts. There's like a group of people in LA that all the promoters kind of know. And they basically spend all their time just going through Craigslists and, newspapers and listings looking for available spaces. And they become kind of just brokers for the rest of the promoters in LA. People go to them and be like, I need a venue. It needs to be this big. And they get to work and they kind of bring a lot of things to the table. And, what about this spot and this spot and this spot and this spot? So there's quite a few of those guys around that kind of, they've been in the scene for years. They've been doing stuff for like Doc Martin with his sub-level shows and everything like that. So,
Yeah, I do. One thing that I think is kind of funny is you see a lot of people. I don't know if this is actually unique to LA. As I'm saying it, I'm like, I was gonna say, it seems like there's a lot of people who like stick with it in LA and actually make careers out of these weird random things. But like I feel like there's been the same guy flyering outside of every Golden Voice concert I've been to since I moved to LA, 15 years ago or whatever, 12 years ago.
Just stick with it, man.
Like, it's just like, I mean, I hope at this point he's running the opera. Like, maybe he's like their head flyer dude.
Yeah.
Like, I should probably find out. Like,
maybe we should do podcasts with those guys. See the progression of their careers. What's
flyer,
next, man?
A flyer guy around. I'm trying so hard not to say flyer bitch. Yeah. That's what we used to call them in Detroit.
That's a little condescending. Yeah.
It's completely condescending. And some of my best friends started out as my flyer bitches back when I had the club in Detroit.
I like that word though.
But yeah,
keep that one.
It's a terrible thing to say. But there is same with sound guys, same with all these various.
Yeah. I mean, there's sound guys in LA who've been doing sound at warehouse parties for like the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Even like talking to some of the sound guys in this city, they're like walking encyclopedias of the LA scene because they've seen pretty much everything, But you're absolutely right. It's sound guys, lighting guys, flyered people, and so it's funny because I told you a little while ago, a friend of mine from New York was visiting. We went to the other party that was going on. I think Incognito was doing an event with Shin, who was like one of the Stroboscopic Artifacts events. It was the other party that was going on the same time as the Neil Landstrom show. And I was standing there, and my friend's like, "Oh man, it's a really cool vibe here in LA at the party." He's like, "Do you know any of these people?" And I was like, "Actually, I don't think I know any of these people personally, but I've been seeing their faces for the last 20 years."
Right.
You know what I mean? It's so many familiar faces.
Yeah.
And you know them by name.
Incognito guys, I mean, they're up to 50, 60 events or whatever they're up to.
And they do a lot of parties. But at the same time, it's almost like the same group of people who kind of come to all the events. I mean, so it's always familiar faces. You see them. you hug them. They're like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" And it's like you've never had a personal relationship with any of these people beyond that, but you've been going to the same events for the past 2 decades.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I could say that like that Neil Landstrom party, I didn't know anybody. Like, Vidal was there for a minute.
Vidal.
I knew Vidal. But I was like, I mean, again, there weren't that many people.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a younger crowd.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
yeah, definitely. I think like a few of the acts that were on that lineup, they grew up out in my neighborhood, out in Whittier area. They were playing that same party. This guy Billy and Nathan, and they have definitely kind of made themselves this younger generation of techno enthusiasts that are coming up in LA. They're like in their mid to early 20s, and they're coming to parties and playing shows and bringing massive groups of mid to younger 20-year-old people out to their events. And it's cool to see that there are people that are like, you know, carrying the flag or carrying the torch on to a younger generation, and things are going. So you're right. I've seen an influx of definitely a lot younger people starting to come out to events, but we need that. I mean, because it's eventually the people who come to our parties now are going to get married and have kids and then stop going out to parties, and then you wouldn't want the scene to die. You want someone to keep it going. You know what I mean?
That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, not with the kids, but like the fact that I like humped it out to, you know, watch Neil Landstrom play for a half hour, or, you know, like when I saw you when Dustin Zahn was in town.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was another one of those parties where it's just like random space. That probably was a little better attended, like, you know, 200 people maybe, but
hot
I don't
as
know.
hell
So,
in that spot.
So hot. The only thing hotter than that was Berghain 3 weeks ago when the AC went out.
Ooh, that's brutal.
Did you hear about this?
I heard about the lights came on or something like that.
It was also Zahn. Okay, we just figured out the problem. It's Dustin.
It's always Dustin. He brings the heat to the parties.
But yeah, dude, it was. They say lightning hit the building.
Yeah.
I don't know who confirmed that, but that's what I heard, like, from staff.
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, it was like lights on. Everyone had their shirts off because it was like so hot.
I mean, just the fact that you say lights on in Berghain is cringeworthy.
It was pretty amazing. And the best part about it was for me, anyways. Because I came in with Dustin, and it was his party, his night. He was playing last, so you know we had a little talk with the door guys. Well, you know, they're like, yeah, the lights have been on for 4 hours. We do not know when they will go off. And then, but we did the back elevator. Up to the DJ booth, so we didn't get the normal entrance where like you go through the coat check and you go up those stairs and you know the ritual of entering Berghain.
Yeah.
We had the alternate where we just did the back stage, and you come in the back of the DJ booth, and so you're behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And I will, you know, one of those just moments that just, you know, your brain takes a snapshot. Dustin, you know, pulled back the curtain to step through, and you see the lights are on. There's smoke. Like I remember. Actually, the thing I remember is you could still see the club lighting.
Yeah, like the fog.
Because they were leaning on the smoke to try to, you know,
mask it a bit.
The
mess.
The mess. So you could still see the lasers and stuff kind of tracing in the air, even though it was well lit.
What a trip.
And just like a sea of flesh.
Wow.
And white smoke.
Yeah.
And power. Gridivik, Pargrinvik. Thank you. I made that way more hard than it needed to be. Just like kind of turning and looking at us with this most ridiculous smile on his face as he's just banging.
Yeah,
it was just one of those just perfect
this is a moment.
Brain takes a snapshot, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, the only time I seen that at Berghain myself, me and David Truncate, we went back to back for the closing slot, which started Sunday night at 1 a.m. and went Monday morning until like 11 in the morning or something like that. It was my first time ever being at Berghain until the club actually closes on Monday. I mean, I've been there thousands of times, but I'm sorry. I guess I'm just not as hardcore as most people that I want to stay at a club until Monday morning. But playing the closing set was absolutely one of the most incredible moments of my life as a DJ. It was a fascinating experience. And just at the very end, you know, the club owner turned around and said, if you guys want to play like another hour, like feel free to, you can keep going. But me and David had just dropped. Well, actually, David dropped the track, and it was just the most beautiful closing track ever. And to play anything after that just would have been blasphemy. Like,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
What
It
was
was
the
just
track?
like, I can't remember off the top of my head, dude.
Okay.
It's funny because he shared it with me and I've played it a few times. I got to go back and listen to it. Before that track, I did play, which is really weird. I played Sea Monkey by Motorrat,
Okay.
which is not a techno track at all.
Yeah, not a typical.
But
But I
it-
guess that's the point of when you're playing that.
When you're playing that late, but that track absolutely just destroyed the floor. People went crazy, and then David played the following track after, which I can't remember the name of, but it was beautiful, just the way it ended. So we just turned around, we're like, no, that's it, like we're done. And the lights came on, and it was the first time like just seeing a full room of people at Berghain with the lights on, and it was just like, whoa, reality check. It's like that's an interesting sight, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a little fascinated with like, and I hate going on about that club so much, but you know, it's like, who decides when it's time to close?
Yeah.
Like that. Well, and that's kind of a German thing. It's not so specific to Berghain. They've developed this thing where they push it longer than anybody.
Yeah,
and
just keep going.
you know, they were open for 86 hours over New Year's this year, and
I guess if the bars keep pushing drinks.
yeah, I mean,
it's
now
just,
like Dustin went on at 3 a.m. Like I feel like that's not like when I left Berlin a little over a year ago, the closing set was usually like midnight, 1 a.m. was when it started.
Yeah.
That you're saying like you guys started at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Now it's like 3 a.m. is when like they schedule the last
closing
DJ.
slots, yeah. I mean, to completely on the flip of that, last weekend I played Berghain. I actually did the opening slot,
Okay.
which was interesting.
Yeah.
To like play the complete polar opposite. In February I played the closing slot. This time I played the opening slot, and I actually really, really, really enjoyed opening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like to play music and people just trickling in throughout the
Yeah.
night. I mean, I started at midnight and the club wasn't full until about 2 a.m. I played from midnight to 5. So I had 3 hours basically of a completely full club. But the first 2 hours was great just to kind of explore through different music and just kind of get the night warmed up.
One is interesting because even when the club's full, like it doesn't. It's a different energy.
Yeah.
Like I always say, like Berghain, it's like an oil tanker.
Yeah.
It takes like it takes a long time to get
Get it
going,
moving.
but it also takes a long time to come to a stop.
Doesn't take breaks very easily.
But yeah, I remember like it was Brian Kosenek from Bunker
Yeah.
did the opening set like a year and a half ago, and yes, I showed up. He started at midnight. I think I got there around 1.
Yeah.
And from that, like from 1 to 2, they didn't even have. They just had still lights on. It was just like a blue hue.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like the lights weren't even moving.
No, it's just kind of like a tranquil thing.
Yeah, and then finally like 2 a.m. Brian like brought in
it
a
up.
kick, and all of a sudden like the lights moved for the first time, and they just did a sweep, and then they stopped. And I look at them like, did the lights just move?
Surprise. Yeah.
So
Good times.
But you also, I mean, you play. I mean, I know you play everywhere, but Germany seems like it's really.
Yeah, there was a time, definitely. I would say.
I
About
mean, not just Berlin. Like you play.
Yeah, I specifically nowadays it's a little bit different, but like 2 or 3 years ago, I was playing everywhere in Germany. I mean, just like any small town that you can think of. There's clubs everywhere in Germany, and they're big clubs and they're packed with lots of people. But I played so many places, and still till today, I frequent playing in like Frankfurt. I played it just downstairs of the Robert Johnson just recently at the MTW Club in Frankfurt, and I play Lehman Club in Stuttgart, Germany quite often, occasionally in Hamburg here and there. But there was a period where I was playing a lot of gigs in Germany. Now it's a little bit spread out, Portugal and France and Spain. And
What was the change? Do you think? Because I mean, I feel like it was the CLR connection
probably
that kind of got you into that really.
Yeah, that kind of German techno world.
Yeah,
that
that
definitely
runs deep. Like it's like every little town has their little techno club, and
yeah, it definitely was like right when I did the first album with CLR, and the network was strong within Germany, I would say. But I moved away from working with them, and I'm putting out records on. I just did a recent release on Rodhead's label Dystopian. And that definitely had a little bit more of a broader kind of range with the bookings, and it's
Sure.
kind of just been out and about in new different places. I mean, like last weekend I played in a little bit outside of Porto in Portugal, at Festival Forte, which was inside of the walls of this medieval castle. It was incredible. I think it was like one of the most amazing venues that I've ever seen in my entire
Oh yeah, I saw you
life.
posted some stuff about it. Yeah.
Really, really fucking cool, man. Super cool.
So where's left to go? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you this much. I've never been to Krakow, Poland, which I'm going this week, and it's always exciting to go somewhere you've never been before.
Krakow's cool. I went to Unsound out there a few
Okay.
years ago.
I played for these promoters. They go by Institute, and I played for them in Warsaw not long ago, and they threw this party in this giant warehouse that holds like one of the world's biggest Tesla coils.
Okay.
And it's like a research facility where they do studies on electricity or lightning or trying to recreate lightning inside of this giant room. It has like a door that opens really slow that you would think like a NASA rocket would come out of. It's incredible. And they threw a party there, played there. It was an incredibly successful event. And then they kind of just reached out back and booked a little tour of mine to play a bunch of different dates inside of Poland. So I'm going to do that. But, I haven't explored much of Eastern Europe, to
Right.
be honest with you. I had one gig at in Moscow in Russia at Monasterio, but had some visa issues and couldn't get into the country
Oh, wow,
at the
okay.
particular time. So I've never played in Russia actually, and it's somewhere I'd love to go to. You know, I'm going to China for the first time in December, playing in Beijing and Hong Kong, and so never been to that portion of the world. The only place in Asia I've ever played was Tokyo. So looking forward to China.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. So what about I don't know if it matters where you play, but like it's like Mexico, South America.
Yeah, actually, I've been playing in Mexico and South America for a long time.
Yeah.
For years. I've had a great run of gigs in Colombia. I've played in so many different little cities in Colombia and crazy gigs in the middle of the rainforest and jungles out in places like that. I mean, obviously, Medellin and Bogota, Cali. I can go on and on, but Colombia's always been really good. Argentina, play a lot of gigs there. And various different cities around Argentina. And then Mexico in Guadalajara at this club called Bar Americas, which in my opinion is like one of the closest experiences you can get to like a European nightclub experience in North America.
Okay.
The club like opens on Friday and closes Sunday afternoon, and it just goes nonstop. And DJs that go there and play there have played 8, 10, 11-hour sets. And, it's just, the club is free to get in, so it always stays busy.
Wow.
And, I think they just make the majority of their money off the bar, but Bar Americas is incredible. And that's in Guadalajara, Mexico, which is surprisingly that's where my family's from.
I was gonna ask, is
Yeah.
is there a bit of extra connection being like, because there's not a lot of Latino
Yeah,
techno producers. I mean, there are, but like
there are mostly
you know,
from
kind of-
California. Yeah.
or northern Mexico,
Yeah,
as it's sometimes
exactly.
called. But yeah, like
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't really have a lot of family connections. I mean, Luis Flores, who is one of the staple main artists on the Droid label, he is from Guadalajara and had a standing residency at Bar Americas.
I think
for a
that's why
year.
it's familiar. I think he's talked to. I
Yeah.
was thinking when you said it to me, like I know this
Yeah.
place, and I think I've actually talked to him about it.
Yeah, so he was there playing at that club for years. I had gone down to Mexico to play these festivals, I would say in the mid-2000s, called Technova Festival, which was like this techno festival they would do out in like the haciendas and a little bit outside of the city in Guadalajara, but they were massive festivals, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people that were going on, which is pretty big for Mexico
sure.
in general.
But it's kind of pretty big for every.
Yeah.
Even in Europe nowadays, except for Time Warp
Yeah.
or Sonar, except for like the real tentpole
Yeah.
events.
So I would go out to these Technova festivals, and that's kind of where I met Luis. And it was funny because every time I'd go out to Mexico, it was always kind of like partially to visit my family and partially to just like get a gig. The money wasn't even really important. Going out there to have a reason to go visit family was one thing, and then if I had a gig while I was out there, then that would just be the cherry on top. But that relationship developed. I saw him play for the first time out there, and he has got a phenomenal following in Mexico. I mean, anyone who listens to techno in Mexico knows who Luis is, and he's got a lot of respect. I mean, he was involved in helping bring Mutech to Mexico at one point. He's been in the scene since the very early '90s. He's kind of has a rich history in the Mexican kind of rave culture that was there for years. But anyways, enough about him.
Do that guy.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what it is? Just to give a shout out. I didn't talk to him about it. He talked about it on the Trainwrecks podcast that he did with Dustin. You've done a few of those.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So if you're enjoying this conversation and you want like something that's a little longer and a little drunker.
Yeah, a little drunker for sure.
Dustin Zahn does a podcast called Trainwrecks that Moe here, Drumcell's been on a few times, as has Luis, a bunch of people. So anyways.
Yeah, so, I mean, that relationship developed, and he's become kind of like a staple in our label, and that really kind of bridged a relationship between us and Bar America. So it's definitely a club that we've gone to and played frequently. I play Mexico City fairly often. I don't want to say anything bad about Mexico City because I know that they have a great scene. I just have not had very much luck there. Seems like whatever party I've played has been hit or miss. Some have been
that happens
decent. Some of them are like whatever.
I can name a couple like really great. Well, I remember like Doc Martin. Yeah. He played for me once or twice in the early 2000s, and then and they were both a bust, and we went out to Chicago. He was playing, and that was also kind of a bummer. Yeah. I remember just being like, no luck in the Midwest this year. Just and it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. It's just
that's not just America. I mean, I've had that in Europe. Sure, I've gone over and played like a stream of 4 or 5 gigs in Europe, and every gig was just like, yeah, this is depressing. Of course, your Facebook posts are always like, thanks for coming out.
Okay,
that was amazing.
That's a whole other issue I have with this, this thing that everybody does now where, as long as you get that photo and your social media post, talks everybody. I had to write a.
Be open about it, man. Let it out. Let's hear it, dude.
Well, I had to, okay. So It's funny because I saw you a bunch in Europe last year, 2 years ago, when I was actually doing social media professionally for Berlin-based techno conglomerate. Yeah. And all good. What they do is fine. And yes, social media is, but there's this point where I was just like, no, everybody just smashes it. Every weekend, and I actually got into a debate with a publicist over a recent guest on the show, where his organization wasn't really happy with the way it was presented, and I finally, after a couple back and forths, I had to be like, you know what? You don't get to decide, and the fact that we now live in this world where everybody smashes it all the time, and every party's the bomb.
Every party's amazing.
They don't call it the bomb, but every and as long as that everyone feels like they can write their own narrative, and that's what it is. And no wonder everybody, people are getting sick of it. If every party's the bomb, and that's the only conversation anyone ever has about this scene or this music, then it's going to get fucking boring, and people are just going to move on to something. Because people, as much as it's about the music, it is about more than the music. People want to talk about it in between the music. People want to, have things happen in the community. Yeah. And if everything's just, if everyone smashes it every time, then it's just like...
Social network is so incredibly deceiving. Yeah. I mean, you could make people believe... You could project what you want, to be out there as however you want it to be, and people are going to see it that way. I mean, I think it comes from an innocent perspective for the most part. I mean, I could say for myself, I have a great sense of gratitude to any promoter who has enough, believes in me enough to book me for a gig. And to invest their time and money into me. And of course, maybe this doesn't apply so much to bigger nightclubs where they're just trying to sell tickets. But I mean, in the techno world that we're in, a lot of times I play for a lot of promoters that are just in for it for the passion. I mean, they're not all out there just to make big money. They do it because they love it. They got a day job. They hate their day job. It's over. They go home, and what they live for is throwing parties on the weekends every once in a while. And when they believe in you enough to invest their own personal money into bringing you out somewhere, like I said earlier, I've got a great sense of gratitude for it. And if the party sucks, at the same time, you don't want to have to go online and just be like, hey, yeah, thanks for coming out. That party sucked, but, next time. Because to them, it's defeating. You know what I mean? And I think to a certain extent, you want to kind of inspire people to continue doing whatever they're doing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, obviously, we don't have to blow it out of proportion and, Photoshop a picture of a big crowd and be like, that was amazing if the party sucked. But at the same time, I do want to express gratitude as much as possible after every gig that I play. Like, hey, for everyone who did come out to the party, thanks for being there. Like, I really appreciate it.
Sure.
So, I mean...
And I'm not saying that the debate needs to be, whether... Or the discussion. When we make it a debate, because that makes it sound, confrontational. But that the discussion needs to be about whether a particular event was good.
For sure.
But there seems to not be a lot of any conversation because that's all anybody wants to post.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's always... positive. Everything is positive. Everything is amazing. Everything is great. And you don't ever get a sense of realism because for the most part, I would say that the largest majority of DJs out there will kind of admit that a large portion of our gigs just aren't really all that great all the time. They're not always amazing. You know what I mean?
When that happens, do you blame yourself? Do you blame... is there a feeling? I'm sure it varies from event to event, but is it like if you have a run of like 4 or 5 bad gigs, does that give you that like, oh man, maybe I need to get out a record, maybe I need to get out a newer record on this label, or maybe I need to,
well, I mean, a lot of people might argue with me on this particular thing, but I think I'm very hard on myself. So I think I'm always the first person to blame. Like I blame myself before I blame anyone else. And that's not necessarily a good thing either. Like, because it's not always your fault. You know what I mean? But I try to put things in perspective as much as possible. Sometimes it's just the crowds. Like it's very, sometimes you're just in a city that you think might be a big techno city, but the large majority of the people in the crowd don't even know who you are, and they might have just showed up because they wanted to dance and they just really don't like techno, or they want something more housey or something like that. And then in other cases, there are a lot of cities where people just don't really go crazy. Like they love the music. Like I've played in Tokyo one time, and like I felt like everybody in the crowd was just staring at me.
Yeah.
And then I was just sitting up there in just panic mode, like, shit, I got to try this, or I got to play this, or I got to recover from whatever happening here.
That's always been a thing. I mean, Detroit had that problem for a long time.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about this, but there was, I hate to say it, a lot of the point, like especially like in the late 90s when I was going to parties, there was a lot of fucking, I think the only person who ever said anything, Surgeon, played a party that was actually in Kalamazoo, but whatever, it was all Detroit people who went. It was him and Jeff Mills. And he talked about it later. I remember this like in an interview where he was just like, I felt like I was just on display. And it was so much of it back in the day was, it's like the kids with their backwards baseball hat and their oversized sweatshirt and their fat pants, just kind of standing there with their arms crossed. That was a lot of the Midwest for a good chunk of the time.
Yeah, and it was funny because in that Tokyo gig in specific, like when I finished, I'm wrapping up my gear and I'm thinking, fuck, I bombed that one. You know what I mean? And then I walked out in the crowd and it was just like hordes of people like, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Like thank you for coming. And I'm thinking like, that's not what I felt like when I was up there because I was getting no reaction from anybody. But it's just, I guess it's culturally, just depends on the city or whatever. But
somebody told me about some club in it was definitely in Japan. I don't know if it was in Tokyo, but they actually had like railings, so like the dance floor was actually like sectioned off. So rather than just being like a big open space, they had like like paddocks. Yeah, you would like go into one and like that was your paddock, and like there'd be like this many people, like, and I don't know if they're like
super weird.
Only 20 people per paddock. Like I don't know. I remember hearing about this and
wow, yeah, I've never heard of that myself, but I mean, I've always kind of been big on the idea that let's just stop putting the DJ up on a pedestal and everyone just kind of like worshiping the guy on the stage and just shut up and just dance and just like enjoy the music. You know what I mean? We don't need to have to glorify anybody and put them up on a stage, but I guess that's just marketing and a way of making money.
Well, I think about this all like it's also just kind of how the sound systems are built.
Yeah.
It's your natural tendency to face towards the sound.
Yeah.
And almost every club, they might have some speakers in the back, but
Yeah.
inevitably, a majority of the sound reinforcements in the
usually
front.
right in front.
That's if there is some sort of visual towards the front.
Yeah. Or we're visually guided to just like looking in a particular
Right.
direction.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, even clubs like Fabric or Berghain or whatever, like there's always going to be some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I played at a few clubs where you have like the DJ booth that's like in the corner. Like even at Berghain, like even the DJ booth.
I mean, I guess it
like
is technically in the corner. Yeah.
it's like in the far right.
But
corner.
but everyone for the most part still faces
They
that
do.
wall.
It's
It's
an-
natural.
it's a-
You come up the back.
Yeah.
And it just feels like the back because you just
Yeah.
came up and they're facing everyone's back.
Yeah.
And even
It's
though
a force
it's
of habit.
yeah, and that's a complete 360 sound system.
Yeah.
It's the exact speakers in the back as it is in the front.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still just that dynamic just
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? Can't really change it, I guess, but just go with the flow.
What's what happens when everyone dances by themselves. Like if people dance like
Together?
yeah, right. Like, did you see The Lobster? Have you
No,
caught that
I haven't
movie?
yet. I've been wanting to see that.
What airline are you flying?
I fly all SkyTeam airlines, so Delta, KLM, Air
Okay,
France.
yeah, they don't have it right now. I flew I went somewhere recently on American. They have it. But there's but there's one particular line where they're like we dance alone, so we only listen to electronic music. Like
Perfect. That's perfect.
something like that. But yeah, so let's talk a little. I mean, do you have a little time?
I'm having
have a place to
nothing
be?
but time, dude.
So awesome. Until your flight tomorrow.
Exactly.
So I'll talk about gear a little bit,
Sure.
which is something I know I rarely talk about because I know nothing about it.
Okay.
But I know like that's your shit.
my forte.
You got some opinions. You actually started some shit on social media.
Did I?
Just a few hours ago.
Oh yeah, today.
Yeah.
That's right.
Talking about these new rolling machines. But you also worked for
Yeah, I worked for a lot of gear companies over the years.
right.
I mean,
So
for the longest period of time, I worked for Native Instruments. I think I put in a good 10 years with them. But previously, before that, I worked a little bit for Axis Virus synthesizers and Waldorf synthesizers and stuff like that. So I think my career before becoming a full-time DJ has always been in the MI industry, music instrument industry. So, yeah.
So
So
having established your credentials,
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
your take on these?
on these new Roland devices.
And maybe explain it a little, because honestly,
Okay. So I guess Roland just reissued the TR909 and TB303 synthesizers. They've rebranded them as TR09 and TR03. And basically they are using what Roland has developed. It's a proprietary format that they call analog circuit behavior. So basically it's not analog, it's digital, but they've modeled it to be behaving like analog circuits, basically. But they've used this technology for a bit on their recent Era product line, which was like they released a TR8, which was all 909, 808, all those drum machine sounds. I know some guys at the Roland, so I apologize if this is offensive, but I just got to be frankly honest with you. And I've always just felt like the Era line just looked horrible. It just is an incredibly uninspiring interface to work with like these kind of like glowing green LEDs. That being said, not all the time does what something look like really matter, because I think they're actually great instruments. They sound great.
Okay.
And they're I use them in the studio till today for production. At the end of the day, the end result is you make a track that you're really happy with and they sound great. But I've never been very keen on the way they looked. So recently they relaunched these, like I said earlier, the TR09, the TR03, and they look in the same motif as the original TR909 and the TR303.
Sure.
So they look great. In my opinion, they're incredibly sexy. They look awesome. Like I just want one. But I think like we just live in this era of like this reigning terror of internet opinions where everyone just feels like their voice matters more than everyone else's, and everyone's like perpetuating negativity towards like, oh, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this or not, but fuck this and fuck that. And, you know, this instrument doesn't, this doesn't sound, this sounds like shit. This isn't analog. And this only has some outputs. And that no one is ever happy with anything that comes out, you know? I feel like in the core of me, I'm just absolutely sick of everyone's opinions on shit.
Okay.
We've just become like this world of people who just complain every time we don't get exactly what we fantasized in our brain. If a company doesn't deliver what you dreamed of last night, you're fucking pissed.
Right.
And you just hate them and you just want to talk shit about them on the internet. Dude, these are just, they're instruments. Like, use them or not. If you don't like them, don't buy them. And like,
there's certainly not a lack of instruments.
no, you know what I mean? Like, I heard some guy earlier just complaining about this TR-03, like, oh, it's only got a mono output. I'm like, dude, the TB-303 had only a mono output too. Like, it's...
Well, some people complain about that. Some people complain that they're not enough like the original, but other people complain that they don't have the new features. You know, I had a conversation online with Matt Edwards, Radio Slave, where, you know, his big complaint is like, people are making fucking virtual reality. Why is our world stuck in, you know, plastic, urban outfitter priced, you know, machines that replicate machines from the 80s?
No, absolutely. I mean, let's face it. These are corporate companies that are making money. And, you know, cutting down costs in production to maximize profit is their ultimate goal. And if they can coin in on recreating something that's been legendary that no one can afford because now they're on eBay for thousands of dollars and we can make a cheaper version of it, what corporate company wouldn't buy into that?
Sure.
You
Well,
know?
and somebody made the point, they're like, oh, yeah, it's like, Techno's so cheap now. And it's like, Techno was fucking cheap when it was invented. That was the whole point.
That was the point
was
of it.
these machines that nobody liked were sitting in fucking pawn shops. So you know, Derek May could buy one for $100 on someone else's credit card or whatever the fucking story goes, you know, like.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, to be frankly honest with you, these new Roland products that come, they're toys. They're techno toys. They're cheap, you know, inexpensive. I mean, a lot of people complain that they're too expensive, but they're $400. And in the grand scheme of drum machines and synthesizer world, that's really not that much money.
Right.
And you know, a lot of people are making tons of money off that. Korg has been making money off these kind of like entry-level toy products like the Volca series synthesizers and stuff like that. They're just putting them out there. They're inexpensive. People buy them. They're fun. You play with them for about a month. You get bored of it and you throw it away. I mean, it is what it is. And I do buy a lot of very expensive equipment. I'm fascinated with synthesizers and I surely love quality instruments by all means, but at the same time, I can appreciate having a small-sized 909 that I can sit on the toilet with.
I think that's what I was saying. That was what you're
and make some beats while I'm taking a shit. I mean, that's great. It runs on batteries, man. What can I complain about?
What's the most expensive piece of gear you have?
Well, I just recently bought an ARP 2600. Which was quite expensive, and I don't have it in my possession yet, but it's actually going to be there probably today or tomorrow. But I think some of the most expensive equipment that I've invested my money in was like the Buchla synthesizers.
Okay, is that like a modular synthesizer?
Yeah.
I've kind of figured that's what the at the end, the modular synthesizers are the boats of the electronic music world. It's just a hole you throw money into.
Yeah, I mean, like the new craze right now is like kind of the Euro rack synthesizer stuff, which, you know, I hate to sound like one of those old farts, but I was lucky enough to get into that stuff before it became as big of a craze as it is today. So, but that stuff, the Euro rack synthesizer stuff was the first kind of modular synthesizers introduced into the industry that were somewhat affordable. So that's why it's become such a craze and so many people have it, because it's the first time that anyone can actually like buy it, you know, or a bedroom producer could. I mean, it's still expensive, but it's still more affordable than ever. But like the Buchla synthesizers and, you know, those are pretty top of the line products that are incredibly expensive. I mean, some of those things cost more than cars.
Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, I don't have any of those. I'm not making that kind of money yet, but I mean, it's.
I think what you need to do is you need to sell Liebing's Mustang. Is that still saying in your garage?
Well,
Chris Liebing's
the Mustang, yeah.
Sell Chris's Mustang and invest in high-end synthesizers.
That's true.
For those who don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the episode of this podcast with Chris Liebing. He talks all about his vintage Ford Mustang that he bought for when he's in LA and is stored at Moe's house.
Did he talk about that on the podcast?
Extensively. Oh, yeah.
Dude.
It's like all we talked about.
Holy shit, I didn't know that. Yeah, he's got his 64 Mustang parked in actually my parents' garage. It's not even at my house. Because there was space in the garage. But I mean,
Mom, Dad, you might have my German techno buddy just buys a car and parks it here.
They didn't mind. But I mean, I drive it all the time. Someone's got to keep the thing running.
Yeah, it's true.
You can't just let it sit there. It goes bad. So I take it out for a spin at least once or twice a week. Not even that far. I don't even leave within like a 10-mile radius of the house. But just to get the motor running and the engine running. That's a beautiful car.
Yeah,
though.
he drove it down. We drove around in Venice in it.
Oh, so you were in it?
Yeah, because we did a shoot. Well, okay, no. I had him on the podcast and we talked about it. And then, like 6 months later, he was back in town, and we did a thing for Insomniac's website.
Okay.
And that one, they like brought the car. We took it, right down to the beach. We, took a bunch of photos, and kind of drove around the Venice canals, and
I had no clue.
The whole thing, yeah. So that car's so sweet.
Yeah, it's great. Actually, the car used to belong to my cousin before Chris bought it. Yeah, it belonged to my cousin, and he was been working on that car for years, of course, with a limited budget. But at some point, he was moving back to Mexico, back to Guadalajara, and he was like, I got to get rid of this thing. And I know Chris was coming out to California all the time and was just like, dude, I really want like a vintage American muscle car. And it was just like perfect. It just lined up. I was like, dude, my cousin's selling this Mustang. And like the deal happened. And Chris put a lot of energy and effort into completely restoring the car to its original state, and like now it's beautiful. It's quite a sight.
Maybe we all get to the point in our lives where we have vintage automobiles stored on other continents for when we arrive.
Well, the thing is, I think at one point we were talking about him moving the car to Germany, but I don't know if that car would survive the winters out there.
This is true.
Because, those cars they're in large abundance in California for a reason. Because
they last.
In California, the weather permits a car to last that long. Like even in the Midwest, a Mustang is going to, with all the salt in the winter that's on the streets and just the weather in general, they get rusted and just torn down over the years. And
I'll tell you what's funny though, for some reason, you don't see a lot of old cars in general and a lot of American cars in like Germany. Where I saw a bunch of them, Norway.
Really?
And I don't know why, and I don't know if maybe just the town I was in, like maybe there was some kind of weird like international. But but no, more than one. You always see these like awesome classic American cars.
Interesting. I didn't even expect that.
In Norway.
But
anyways, that's
myself. Yeah. But yeah, it's fun. It's good to have a car around.
So. But getting back to the synthesizer that you're not going to sell Chris's car for, trade it for.
Yeah, I don't know if Chris would appreciate that. He comes home and I've got like a vintage 200E, booklet synthesizer, and be like, "Where'd you get this?" So your Mustang's gone, man.
He opens up your parents' garage where he expects to see a car. It's just a synthesizer.
It's just a modular synthesizer. Yeah, that'd be sweet. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just to circle back around to the kind of synthesizer discussion is, I get it. Like we all want Roland to re-release a identical TR-909, but whether that'll happen is beyond me. But I'm just not one to just try to make a big deal out of every small thing that gets released. It's always like, it's an instrument. If I want to buy it, I'll buy it. If it's fun, I'll use it for a while. And if not, then just forget about it. There's hundreds of other things out there in the world that I could pour my attention into focusing and being positive instead of just like endlessly ranting about how much I hate what's new.
And even if someone if they did release the exact, circuit by circuit, not only people find a problem with it, everyone who has one would shit the bed because they think like, there goes my kid's college fund, which is what people think their 909 is. Or something.
I think that was like actually a really big thing that people were worried about was, are these reissues going to depreciate the value of my original TR-909?
Right.
No, dude, those things are never going to go down in price. I think if anybody is to buy like the classic era of vintage synthesizers, that is an investment that is never going to decrease.
Yeah.
The value of those things are just going to go higher and higher if they last. I mean, if the synthesizer itself lasts long enough.
But that's kind of true with anything, right? Like eventually there's fewer.
Yeah.
If demand, assuming demand stays, assuming demand still exists, supply will naturally lower no matter what,
of course.
because things get old and things break and things deteriorate. So, but the same thing happens with records. People will be like, oh, I had this record that's worth $100, and then fucking reissued it, and now it's worth.
No, it's not worth shit.
Were you selling it? Like, was your plan to sell it this month to help pay rent? In which case, maybe you ought to.
Well, oftenly, I think we justify to ourselves to buy things or to hold on to something because of its value. You know what I mean?
It's because we're all convinced, if only my parents had held on to my Star Wars toys.
Exactly.
But if everyone's parents had held on to their Star Wars toys.
I'm still angry with my parents for throwing away some of my stuff till today.
but people like, oh, that would have been so much money. Well, no, because if everybody had held on to it, then they wouldn't be worth shit.
That's true. You're absolutely
because everybody would have it.
You're absolutely right. But I think, like, for instance, David Truncate, who we're really great friends. We're on the road together. We're traveling together. We make a lot of music together. He's incredibly productive in the studio. He writes tons of music, and he's basically software based. He does have like a lot of hardware synthesizers here and there, but he doesn't have an extensive collection of things. But the difference between me and him when it comes to stuff is he buys things that he needs. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh, I don't really need that. I don't need that to complete whatever tracks that I'm working on right now. And then he always asks me whenever I buy something like, why did you buy it? You don't need that. I was like, dude, I don't buy this stuff because I need it.
It's about want.
I buy it because I want it. Yeah. Like, I want this stuff. I have a passion for the instrument or the synthesizer itself. It's like, I collect these things. It's what I love to collect. Mm-hmm. It's not necessary. I mean, I could write an album with Native Instruments Complete 10 and Ableton, and I don't need all this like overheating junk in my studio, but I want that stuff, and I feel inspired by it. I like
that was what I wanted to ask. Like, do you? It's.
I do. I mean, when I write tracks, I go through my collection of instruments that I have, and I say, I'm going to write something with this today, and I pull that synthesizer out. And I try to exploit its limitations as much as possible and try to see what kind of weird shit I can get out of it and record it. I don't sit in my studio and, use everything to make a track. You know what I mean?
That would be awful.
Everything is, I've posted, like, there's been videos online or, somebody's done an interview with me where they picture my studio and there's like a track playing and people are like, is all of that turned on when you're making music? No. Yeah. Like 5% of it is being used at a time. I pick something and I use it, and then I put that away, and then the next time I make a track, I find something else to be inspired by and do that as well. So, I mean, yeah, I think another person told me, like, they were just complaining about, like, oh my God, every time you see somebody that has a studio with all this gear, they're the people that release the least amount of music. And you know what? There's a lot of truth to that because I think we're always constantly trying to create parallels between, like, just because you have a lot of gear in your studio that you're supposed to make a lot of music. I don't really think that's true. I think that the largest majority of people on this planet that collect synthesizers and drum machines and instruments probably don't make music at all.
Or at least nothing that gets put out.
Or they don't release. They buy that stuff because they love it. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, if you look back at that documentary that came out, that I Dream of Wire, somebody made a quote, and I'm paraphrasing it, and I'm probably not, I don't remember who made the quote, but someone said, if it wasn't for those people that just buy instruments and don't ever really release or make music, a lot of companies would just go out of business.
Sure. Because there's simply not enough people. There's not enough demand for, records that this many people can put them out that keep it all. And it's like that with any musical instrument. How many?
Sure.
Nobody gets mad at Fender for, like, when you're selling guitars, like cheaper guitars to. Maybe they do.
I don't think they do. I mean, I've got uncles that have Fender guitars and they still don't know how to play them. But like, people buy things and they want to have instruments. And that, I think that applies to the synthesizer world. I think there are people who are enthusiastic and interested in the instruments. They love playing with them. They love sitting in their garage and doodling with them. And I think the people who don't have those instruments or can't afford them or they're not in their reach are the first person to be like, that's a waste. That guy bought it and he's not using it and he's not releasing music. What a waste.
And if only I had that instrument,
yeah,
then my genius could finally manifest and I could get signed to a label and I could start playing the club circuit in Germany.
Exactly.
Where the gigs aren't as good as social media would have you think they are.
Yeah. It's just,
it doesn't fill the hole, man.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to fill that hole.
I mean, I have tons of friends like that, man. I got tons of friends that have like incredible recording studios with so much gear and they don't release music. They're like building managers or like, you know, they work in real estate or something like that. And that's their job. It's just they come home and instead of watching a football game and drinking beer with their friends, they patch modular synthesizers.
Yeah, why not?
Like that's just their fun. And I have no hatred with that whatsoever, you know.
I wish I had a little more I wish I had any sense of how it all works because that's the one thing like I didn't know how to program an 808 until the iPad came out and I discovered like, oh wait, there's this like 808 thing. I had never even touched it. I was so intimidated, I think, by people that like had it and I don't know, just as I did it. I wasn't drawn to it.
What's funny is that like people like you, instruments that like what Roland just released are perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's perfect, dude. You go to Guitar Center and spend $300 on a little drum machine, and you got something you could play with.
Yeah,
you know, like
that almost sounds better. Because I do remember at one point, like downloading like a cracked version of Contact or something. One of those like softwares where if you know what the fuck you're doing, you can do anything with it. And I was like, I didn't know. I don't even know how to start on this thing. Like, so yeah, maybe I should go buy one.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Just to fuck around, but.
I mean, you always got your iPad if you.
I also just have my iPad, and for what I'm trying to do, which is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I do that. I know that Korg like re-released like the MS-20 synthesizer on the iPad. I sit on the airplane all the time and just like with my finger drag and drop patches on this like semi-modular synthesizer and make sounds.
It is kind of incredible what you see people do on iPads, and like I was on a long flight to. I was going to New York, and I was sitting next to this like kind of like hip hop kid and like his like Supreme sweatshirt. He had dreadlocks and he was like, and I was watching him on his iPad like, and he's like flipping back and forth and be like, you know, put on the new Frank Ocean record, and then like cut to this like art app where he's like, I think he was probably like in a group, like I'm guessing a rap, hip hop group. He's like
some graffiti,
like doing some like, but it was like this like cool like almost like punk deconstructionist fucking up the photos and doing cool effects, and they like flip over and like flip it to Kanye, and he's like rocking out, like his head's like bobbing the whole time, and he's feeling it, and he's like in the zone, and he's like. Just sitting on an airplane, and look, I don't know if he's actually a musician and if it's actually anything's going to come of this, or if this is just him and his friends fucking around. But like he was into it, he was doing it, and he was making something, and he had like on the graphic end, like I was there was enough going on with what he was doing that it's clear he puts a lot of time and energy into this. This is not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it all comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
and then if you happen to be one of the lucky 1% that it becomes a career, great, but that's not really.
But at the end of the day, it's like if you're enjoying what you're doing and whatever you have in front of you is inspiring you to create or do something or making your head bop on an airplane, like that's all you really need.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I need to figure out a way to do podcasts on airplanes because this almost feels like my hobby.
With this like endless like airplane oscillating hum in the background.
It wouldn't be the worst sounding podcast I've done.
Yeah, it could be. But it'd be interesting.
So, all right, man. Well, we should probably...
Sure.
We're 40 minutes over on the studio time.
Was somebody like staring at us through the window, like tapping on the wrist? Like
I never know.
Time to go, man.
Also, that cold brew went right through me. So
awesome.
All right, dude. Thanks for coming by.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. It
Absolutely.
was fun. Good times.
All right. That's it for this episode of the Rave Curious podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another conversation with a key player in the electronic music scene. If you like what you heard, let us know. You can email us, ravecuriouspodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Rave Curious and Facebook Rave Curious Podcast. If you're listening on SoundCloud, you can go ahead and leave a comment. You can follow us, and you can even repost to share the Rave Curious Podcast with the rest of the world. And of course, if you're listening on iTunes, you can follow us and leave a rating and a comment as well. That's it. Thanks for listening.